Probably the best analogy that I'd use is I help people go from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive, right? That's probably my secret sauce. Um, I'm originally from Arizona, grew up on a ranch and in the desert. So, four-wheel drive vehicles are pretty important. And what I've always found is that uh, executives tend to get to where they are based in two-wheel drive. There's two things that are firing, right? It helps them, early on just to, and then they start to plateau a bit. And it's the two-wheel drive. Often it's around, high levels of insight and determination, right? They're really good thinkers and they're really good warriors. But what happens is that get to four-wheel drive really requires, I think, a different sense of, wow, how do I engage people differently? Sorry for being crass here, but it's the lover. It's connecting hearts and minds, right?
Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? Well, welcome back. Before we begin, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing a personal or professional challenge, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. Dave, who do we have today on the podcast?
I am excited to welcome Steve. And Steve, we created this podcast because we like to hang out with coaches, learn a little more about what they do, and we're excited to have you on. And we like to start off with a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
On a scale from 1 to 10, your energy level, 1 being low, 10 being high, where are you in the present moment?
I'm glad you didn't ask about anxiety level. But energy, probably 7 or 8.
7 or 8. Awesome. And anxiety reframed as energy, right? So it's,
good move, Dave. There you go. Energy level, look, quite good. Started off this morning with a coaching session with a client, and we really went deep. And so that's always a great way for me to increase my energy level. So I'd say energy is probably more at 8 or 9.
Very nice. I am coming in at a 9 today. Had a good, had one of those good nights of sleep, and woke up with lots of coaching thoughts. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I would say I'm going to say 8.5. I've had a good week and it's been really fun, and I've learned a tremendous amount. And there's been some great surprises, and this is my last session for the day, so I can't even complain. This is really it's been really good. So
that's the way Friday should be. So, Steve, we're going to get in a little more around your background, but just to start with, let's say you're on an airplane and the person next to you turns to you and says, "Hi, what do you do?" How do you describe that to them?
Yeah, what a tough question to answer. Right. This last week I was on an airplane sitting next to someone, and they said, "Hey, so what do you do?" And I said, "Well, it's my privilege to make CEOs." And they said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, boards and leadership teams will hire me to figure out who amongst them has the potential to become a CEO. And then once they identify that potential, then it's about helping them to transform into a CEO." So if you're asking me, Dave, probably the best analogy that I'd use is I help people go from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive, right? That's probably my secret sauce. I'm originally from Arizona, grew up on a ranch and in the desert. So, four-wheel drive vehicles are pretty important. And what I've always found is that executives tend to get to where they are based in two-wheel drive. There's two things that are firing, right? It helps them, early on just to, and then they start to plateau a bit. And it's the two-wheel drive. Often it's around, high levels of insight and determination, right? They're really good thinkers and they're really good warriors. But what happens is that get to four-wheel drive really requires, I think, a different sense of, wow, how do I engage people differently? Sorry for being crass here, but it's the lover. It's connecting hearts and
Mm.
minds, right? The other side of it is being curious, to be a dreamer, to be able to see out and to kind of look where's everything going. Be curious about what's happening outside, what's going on inside themselves. And what I find is it's really easy for individuals to think about, you know, when we coach people, often executives want to know, okay, tell me what I should do, right? They want to know the what's, but that's really not impactful. It's the vertical development. It's the how do I show up differently? How do I engage four-wheel drive? Right? They just want to go down and push that lever, but it's something. What I'd say it's even more. It's a steeper curve around how do I show up differently, and what is it about me going on inside of me that keeps me from, because they know what to do. It's just that they can't access
Mm.
that. So
I love that question. All right. Thanks, Steve. That's really, my mind has blown already. I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's we had an ice storm recently here in the East Coast. I live in New York, and I had to drive my son to his job, local job, and I was looking at the cars, and I noticed that one of the cars was four wheel drive, and one of the cars was all wheel drive, and I was like, "What's the difference?" Right? The all wheel drive was automatically always on, and the four wheel drive you get to lock the
Mm.
axles, right? So for a leader, it's just interesting. As you said that, I was like, does a leader employ the button, or do you try to get them to
mm.
have that always on,
Yeah.
like automatic?
Oh, I love it. I love that question because you talked about energy before, right? So let's just kind of play with that a little bit. In my mind, executives, those four areas I just talked about, those are paradoxes. Those are polarities. And just think of them, I often tell executives, think of them like
Mm.
a light pole, or electricity pole, and you're a bird on the wire, and at times you need to be more warrior, and there are times you need to be more lover, right? But you have to be able to read
Mm.
and deploy that simultaneously, and it has to be effortless. And so I think people need to be able to recognize, kind of a lookout of what's needed, when and where and how, and employ different elements. So I do think that it's not a shift the gear, and it's not an all-wheel drive, but it's being able to live within the
Mm.
polarity, right? To that complexity, because is it a complicated world? Yeah. Is it a complex world? Oh yeah. And the other polarity that I see, Dave, often is that of the dreamer and the thinker, right? Because yeah, you got it's about solving issues, about solving problems, coming up with solutions over here as a thinker. But as a dreamer, it's about what's really going on outside, and how do we set the vision, what's going on inside of me, and being able to effortlessly move across
Mm.
when it's needed and recognized, right? And often, what I work with executives to do is to do that without even thought, right? Because initially there's a lot of thought that goes into, okay, well, how do I do this? But get to the point where you can just move
Mm.
effortlessly.
And they would just demonstrate that care for people in just such a way that is authentic for them. And when they walk into a room, they know that it's real and not manufactured. Because I would imagine at the beginning that it almost feels like, okay, I've got to go through the motion. I've got to learn how it's possible to learn how to love people well. I was thinking,
Mm. So I love where you're going with that, Matt. So I'm just going to do a quick coach
yeah.
piece, if that's okay. Uh, because the reality is what you just talked about. I need to learn how to do it. That's what
Mm.
to do. And I guarantee you, these executives, right? This guy that I was with this morning, he knows what to do. But how do I
Mm.
show up differently? How do I access different parts of me? Right? Dave, you talked about energy before. That's what we're talking about. It's energy. It's, I genuinely care about people. And what is it that keeps me from that? Um, I always say, the way I think about it is, we often put a shield up, and you see what I want you to see on the other side of the shield. And then if you go beyond that shield, then you start to think about, you penetrate that shield that I want you to see, and then I show a little bit of anger, like, what are you doing? Right? You're getting too close. And I get angry because I'm a little bit afraid, and I'm a little afraid because there's some pain in there. And the pain, and then when you can get past that, you can get to the person, the me, the real me, the young me that was uninhibited, right? And so the question is kind of working through those layers like Shrek, trying to peel the layers
Mm.
of the onion back so that it's just an authentic me. And I think that's the joy, right? You can see it in my eyes
Mm.
as I'm watching my own eyes here, right? My smile. That's what I just love. I just love this piece of work around helping people, rediscover parts of them that they may not have remembered were in them.
And getting to that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, that makes me think. Like, I wonder. Well, the question that comes to mind is, so who can I show this to? Where, where is it possible to be this way with my leadership team or whatever it happens to be? Because it sounds very vulnerable, and as a
Mm,
coach, I need to be able to create that forum space
that
that
space. Yeah.
they should be able
Yeah.
to say, "Hey, look, this is really how I show up," or this is the way
Mm,
I'm not liking how I am with this, and I wish
yeah.
it wasn't that way. Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
I love this. I love the lyrics by Leonard Cohen in his song "The Anthem." Right, I like his lyrics probably more than the song, the singing itself. But I first heard this by the chairman of our firm, Egan. The chairman in his opening speech to a partners meeting shared this, and it just touched me many years ago. He read, and the lyrics go something like, "Ring the bells that can still ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." And I think there's something very real in terms of letting the light in, of recognizing that there is a crack and that we are imperfect. What is it? The Japanese pottery, kinskurai. I know I'm getting it messed up, but to repair something with gold, there's an art of repairing pottery with gold or silver, something along that line, right? To a silver lacquer, and understanding that the piece is more beautiful for having been
mm,
broken. And I think that when I'm working with executives, when I'm working with individuals, it's about trying to help them understand that it's not about this shield that you're trying to put up, right? It's about getting rid of that. It's about getting rid of the fear. It's about understanding the pain so that the real authentic you shows up. At that point, we really can start to see the vertical development
mm.
that I think we all talk about and aspire to.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when I shoot from the belief about myself, I am whole, I am broken, I am right, I am worthy, to straight to like an activity you would coach a leader around, right? So like a leader gets feedback that they're not seen as friendly enough, right? So you talk with that leader and you talk about, well, what's the activity that a leader who would care about people would do? They'd say good morning to three people every morning. Okay, great. Put it on your calendar. So what happens? What do you coach for? Do you coach for the belief that you can be friendly? Now go do that activity. Or do you coach to just go do the activities and your beliefs will follow?
I love the question, Dave, and I might even think about it in terms of a different dimension as well, right? Because if someone's getting some feedback that, wow, this is really hard, or not hard, but you're not being friendly, right? Your point was you're not being friendly with others. I'd probably start at a place around, wow, well, what is it that gives you energy around other people? What takes away your energy when you're around other people? Right? When are you at your best? Right? What are some places where you've really been kind? When are places when you haven't been kind? And what keeps you from being, at your best all the time? What's behind that? Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to coach the big, I don't want to coach the barrel, right? The issue, right? I want to coach the person. I want to get to what's happening inside. Where are the internal conflicts, right? And whether it's internal family systems or however you want to play it there, but what are the parts of me that aren't connecting? And what are parts of me that want to be protected? Often that's the younger side of us. And what's the older side of us that knows what to do? And why aren't those coming together, right? That's the piece that where I find the magic happen, right? That's how the light gets in for me. So Dave, if you're asking me, hey, if someone says to me, I want you to coach me relative to I'm not being nice to people, so go put this on your calendar. I'm like, I'm not your coach.
Right.
I'm not your guy for that, right? I want to do the transformative, deep, what's going on here in terms of how do I show up differently. I'm interested in the vertical development. I want to make N-1, N-2s to a point to where they now are both, they know the what as to how to be CEOs and also the how to show up differently to step into that chair.
This feels like it's getting to your
Yeah,
secret
I think, yeah,
sauce.
I was gonna, yeah. Steve, can you describe that secret sauce, or like before you try to describe it, maybe I would ask, like, when did you know this? And what I'm hearing is the move from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive. That's sort of the way of
Mm.
thinking about it.
Well, maybe I'll just share.
When did you know?
Yeah,
Like that was
maybe I'll
like
just share a little bit about me.
when you
Yeah.
coach someone, you went, "Wow, that was." Because what I hear is
Mm.
you're also coaching to say, "Hey, I want to coach them so that they are this whether I'm around or not." Rather than the
Totally.
opposite of I'm going to just do some behavioral coaching and they're only going to do it when I'm in the room. I go to their team meeting and I'm going to going to watch them and give them some behavioral. You're saying, hey, like, how do
Yeah.
we go below the waterline to the four-wheel
Mm.
drive? When
Um,
did you know?
maybe I'll just start with me and just be vulnerable myself for a second, if that's all right. I grew up and I was just one of very few light-skinned people growing up, right? Middle, elementary, middle school, most of high school. And I learned that you got to be a great fighter to survive. And I learned that 1 on 10 or 1 on 12 isn't going to win. So I learned to read the room. So one of my superpowers is the ability to walk in to a room and boom, just read it, right? And that's a blessing and a curse. But I can walk in and I can read people, and it's really a wonderful gift, and it's a curse because I'll just give you many years ago I was meeting with the board. They they wanted they wanted to find someone to be another they wanted to find someone to join their board, and I knew them really well, and I knew that it was ours to lose. And I got a call a few days later from one of the directors saying, Steve, you lost it. And I'm like, what? Right? And they came back and said, Steve, the reality is that you just weren't you. I said, I wasn't me. He said, yeah, you just weren't you in the room. And so the directors decided to go with another firm. And as I went back and thought about it, what happened, Matt and Dave, was that I I realized that I came in, I read the room, but there was a new director, not a director, but a new advisor that they brought in that I wasn't aware of. And so wanting to read the room and understand, I kind of sat back and put up a bit of a shield until I could really see what was going on, and then boom, but it was too late. They sensed that there were two different Steves, and that really started a journey for me of what's going on, right? What's happening there? Because there's a great gift, but there's also this other piece, and so that's been a 10-12 year journey of trying to figure out what is it that I can do to use that blessing, but also to ensure that it's not used in I don't over rely on that in a way that keeps me from being authentic. And so there's just been a lot of deep work in connecting the different parts that maybe weren't connected. And as you can imagine, reading the room sometimes that leads to pleasing, to knowing what someone wants, giving it to them, but not really showing up and knowing, what my boundaries were and what my authentic self was. And so that's a lot of it, right? So there's been a huge journey for me. And so, when people want to go on a journey, I want to be on that journey with them. But if it's just, hey, a little performance coaching here or there, a few tweaks, tell me what to do. Yeah, I could do that, but it's just not. I don't know that I could do that, but I don't get as much energy, Dave, to your point about that around that.
It's interesting because I think I really appreciate you sharing what you learned in your own environment. Like I think it's so important as coaches, the experiences shape us, and then we reflect on them so that we understand them, but they also don't limit what we can hear and how we can help others, right? And sometimes I hear my own voices getting in the way, and I have to take a deep breath, right? And then focus on what is in that room, what's needed now, right? How do we move from A to B to C? I as you learn this, right, and you then take it to your clients. What is it? What would I experience if you were coaching me? What would I experience in your approach to get to those deeper levels to help me be a better leader?
I think, Dave, for me, I think trust travels at the speed of transparency. And so what you would experience is someone who will speak truth, right? So a truth teller, someone who's not afraid to highlight inconsistencies or be able to share, hey, this is what I'm observing. I don't know if I'm right, but this is what I'm sensing. A minute ago, you said this. Wait, I just heard you say 10 different times this word. What's really going on with that, right? Just being aware of listening. I think for me, who was this? The CEO of the former CEO of Oscar Munoz, the former CEO of United, right? I was having a conversation. He's like, it's never, never, never about me. It's always about the people you lead, and for me, it's always about the person I coach. It's never, never, never about me. And so what I try to do when I come in is be very fully present for them, not to put my frame and my lens of my transformation, but this is about them. And what I want to do, Dave, is I want to experience as much breadth. I want to have the craft so that I can call on the stuff of like the Craig Mannings from performance coaching that does so much with professional athletes and all about performance coaching, how he removes interference, all the way to the certified coach approach from ICF, right? And anything and everything in between, all these different capabilities to bring forward and to be able to use to help an individual on their transformation. So again, I try to make it never about me, always about the person I coach.
Steve, what would be so you've talked a lot about a few different things. What would be some resources you would recommend for anybody to just find out more about this, or like into their own, I would say, personal self-discovery on maybe drilling down a little deeper? What would you recommend?
A couple of books, a couple of resources that I really like. One is just for me, personal reflection. David Whyte, Whyte, has a book called Consolations. I find I tend to read those, and they're about a page or two. But man, just he lives in the world of paradox, right? I mean, in terms of adult development theory, he's at the self-actualized level, right? He gets it, right? That's and so maybe that's why I like that book so much, is because I like to play at that level, but I really appreciate his work. There's a book out there a book called Winning from Within by Amy Fox. I really find that to be a helpful book around what's really going on with different parts of me and how do I kind of work through that. The other thing that I would encourage people to think about is like the leadership circle profile. I think that's a pretty interesting tool to try to create connections. I find that to be good from a developmental perspective, less from an evaluative perspective, because it's so easy to manipulate the scores. But I think it's helpful, depending on who you have put your, into your score. You can have a really high or really low score. But I think though, excuse me, the value of that is trying to get to the heart of what are the relationships between above the line behaviors and below the line behaviors, and what are those relationships, and how am I showing up, and what are ways. It just creates a good role awareness there.
Yeah, and especially if somebody wants, I was just Anderson and Adams are legends in my personal mind around, like, if you've ever read Mastering Leadership, and they make a great case for why leadership is founded or has its base in love of other people. And
Mm,
I haven't ever heard anybody explain it as well as they do. Um, so I will add on to that shameless plug for the Leadership
mm,
Circle
I love it.
profile, because I've heard them say it. Dave and we've actually sat in webinar they came to. This was during the COVID years, and they also have one of my favorite phrases: "Leaders bring the weather." It's and I'll
Mm,
know what I can say or can't say. I don't even have to say anything.
mm,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Dave, would you like to give your reflection now? Or you have any other questions that we want to ask Steve?
Yeah, just I think, and tell me if we asked this. I don't know, but if you were to, do you get coached,
Mm,
and what do you want in a
Yeah,
coach for
great
yourself?
question.
I firmly believe in supervisory coachings as I coach individuals, because it's just I need to show up at my best, and I want someone to hold up a mirror so that I can see how I'm coaching, and what parts of me are impacting the the way I coach, so that I can step back and be an even more objective coach. So I love that, but no, I definitely get coached. I think the best coaches in the world are coached by the best people in the world. And so I definitely have a coach. And, one of the things that I've really appreciated about, my coach is that what she does is she is such an incredible mirror. Hey, Steve, right? This is you, or I don't say this is you. Um, she's heavy into somatics, and I probably am not so much into somatics. So I appreciate that she's expanding me in that area. So I really appreciate that. And she uses somatics as a way to integrate that pleaser in me with that early childhood Steve, with the person that I am now, and how do I bring all that together in a way that isn't this, but it's less of this and it's more of this. It's more receiving. It's like, come, right? It's very, very welcoming. Not trying to fight against the parts that need to be cared for, but by integrating them together and just really, really solving for it. It's a I've really appreciated what she's been able to do there.
Yeah, I'll just thank you so much. Just a quick reflection, Steve. First of all, it's so fabulous talking with you, and
Mm,
I so appreciate the opportunity to enter into Matt's relationships, because it's done nothing but expand my world for like the last 5 6 years.
mm.
Um, uh,
He's a
so my
connected guy. He's well connected.
it's amazing, right? And he does it all with a subtle smile. You don't even notice it, right? That's the real
You're
strength,
taking
right?
away my
Well, I think
reflection
the real
there.
reason I
Yeah.
associate with him is because he drives a truck, right? And I'm a
Mm,
4-wheel
yeah.
driver, so he
Mm.
doesn't have a 4-wheel drive, but I won't hold that against him.
Yeah. You know what? That's a whole other episode on what is it? Coffee in trucks with
Mm.
coaches. My reflection is, I do. It's interesting. The 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive really stuck with me, and I think part of my read into your approach is you are so high naturally support, right? I always think support and challenge, right, in your coaching. and you grew up that way, right? You grew up for that, with that need to support and help, and also the strength of your approach in terms of helping leaders become CEOs, right? Of like when to kick it into four-wheel drive and being intentional. And I hear all that balance in your approach
Mm,
is not this or that. It's much more of a positive blend of being the leader that you can be. So I
mm,
really appreciate that.
thank you.
And my reflection, other than to say thank you, Steve, it really truly is an honor to hear. And I'm really grateful
Mm.
are the people that listen to the podcast can hear a fully integrated coach that is
Oh,
applying.
hey, hey, anyone that says they're fully
But
integrated,
no, let me let
that
me
ain't the case. Don't believe them. Don't
let me
believe
be more
them.
specific. Like someone who has taken the way they're coaching and really applied it to themselves in order to be able to. What you used a couple of times is you said, I get energy from talking about these things with other leaders in terms of how they show up. And for some of our coaches, that would be very draining. But that's not the way, that's not
Mm,
what you said. You said it gives you energy. And that to me was
mm,
fascinating. Like, because I will walk away from a coaching session just excited. And it could be something simple, or it could just be like just the willingness for the coach, for the coachee to talk about things that were, at their development edge. And that's what I
yeah,
meant by that. Like, hey, I'm willing to go there because I've also gone there, and let's talk about it.
yeah.
Let's not be afraid. Let's move beyond the armor, past the anger, to get to that vulnerable place.
The, yeah, past the
Yeah,
fear, past
just
the pain.
be, because it's
Yeah,
so much easier to just push back rather than um, like to receive it and grow. That's what I would. Um, that's what I want.
the, no, I really appreciate that feedback. I think the one thing for me is Becky's my assistant, and she and I have been together for quite some time, and in terms of that working relationship, and I will come back after a meeting, after a coaching engagement or a client meeting, and I'll say, man, that's the best conversation I've ever had, right? And I won't get into the details, but I'll just say, man, that coaching session, that was just so incredible, right? And after, she's like, Steve, you keep saying that every time you come back from one of those meetings. I mean, I said, I kind of reflected. I said, I guess it's because every time it just continues to
Mm,
get better, right? Because either it's the mirror, it's the reflection, it's the challenge, it's the support, it's the helping them discover, it's all of the above, and it's just an absolute pleasure and
mm.
passion of mine.
Steve, how would people get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
um, so do a couple of different ways. I have an email address. It's steven.goodman at egonzender.com. Um, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. Would love to connect, love to share ideas about how to help other coaches become even better coaches. And I can't, and again, I think we all decide whether we're going to, just as clients decide whether they're going to work with us. I think we interview clients to decide if we want to work with them. And so while I can't work with everyone, and I can't respond to all requests, I really try to invest time in helping leaders become, get to the next level, as well as helping coaches become, even better coaches. So I appreciate the chance to,
Mm,
to connect.
thanks.
So, a final shout out to our sponsor. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatterscoaching.com to learn more about their transformative coaching and how to get connected to Matt for your organization. Steve, it has been a pleasure. I really appreciated our conversation, and look forward to the next.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Steve.
all. Dave, great to meet you, Matt.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Until next time, have a great day. Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.